Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking yet again about this extraordinary system that is occurring, this winter storm that is currently occurring across the upper Great Lakes and into southern Canada. It is intensifying, it will continue to intensify, it is bringing some nasty showers and storms across the northeast coast, some very impressive heavy snow across the UP and into portions of Michigan and Indiana. And I'll show you what the storm kind of does next, and I'll then show you the cold that the system brings, and arguably, which is probably the most, incredible thing about the system, is just the amount of cold air it will pump into the United States, and that will obviously have the biggest, most broad impacts on a huge amount of people, as opposed to the snow, which is falling in some rather confined areas. So first off, I want to show you the current radar situation. And notice we have this system. It's currently the models had a pretty good job of doing this. You can see there are plenty of freeze watches and warnings issued for the south. As far as the deep south, you can see here, all the way to the Gulf Coast, there will be frost and freezes. That's probably as early as I've ever seen them there. I want to, if you're watching this video from the south, please let me know how, ahead or behind this frost is. Freeze, I doubt it's behind anywhere, but I think it's ahead of schedule pretty much for every area there. Do note this system is circulation is centered across southeastern Quebec, but as we put this into motion, what we do notice is a incredible plume of moisture and many lakes producing lake effects. So we have obviously Lake Superior, where we have the heaviest of the snowfall amounts occurring. We have a plume off of Lake Michigan, where we have very heavy rain, and in portions of northwestern Indiana we do have, and just northern Indiana, we have some heavy snow. And I want to show you actually a webcam from a city that is located under that snow on that radar, and that's the visibility. You can see 8:22 p.m. I'm recording this at 7:26 p.m. Obviously it's an hour ahead because this is Eastern time, so just a few minutes old at this camera footage, and you can see that the visibility is pretty poor. Obviously the snow is falling very heavily. It's pretty much a moderate rain converting into a very heavy snow. Here's another camera that shows us some of that snow that already fell. You can see things got quickly coated in some slushy snow. Again, this will be probably gone by tomorrow mid-afternoon, but still nonetheless an impressive amount of snow. And if I show you some of these snowfall reports, we're getting, you can see 2.7 right there, updated at 7 p.m. So again, pretty recently. They said it started approximately 4:30, so within, what is that, an hour, almost around 2 hours, a bit under, it's accumulated almost 3 inches. So that shows you it's at least almost an inch of snow per hour, and you can see power flickering from heavy wind and heavy snow. And there is another accumulation report too, further south, 1.8. But that still is nothing compared to some of the amounts we are seeing across the UP being reported. You can see that we have 12 inches there from around 1 p.m. The highest amount is at 16 inches, which is actually in Wisconsin right there. And for these areas, the snow is starting to pick up more heavily, so they have some lighter amounts of snow. But you can see there they had 4 inches as of noon. That probably is at least doubled since then. So yeah, obviously an impressive system, impressive storm, and you can see we have more and more areas turning to snow as the sun sets, and we have a cooler, the cooler night air kind of moving in, and the cold air that's being pumped in. So as we put this into motion, or as the storm goes forward into time, this will probably turn a lot more over into snow. So areas in northern Indiana could expect some even more significant accumulation. And if you recall yesterday, that's exactly what I was concerned about. It's just an hour or two of this heavy burst of snow, and with obviously all trees having their leaves still early on in the year, some of this wet sticky snow and strong winds could cause some power outages, and that seems to be the case. Notice yesterday, if you recall, the National Weather Service didn't really have any advisories issued here. They were kind of still unsure how this would play out, and I was kind of mentioning how there's a good chance that this may occur, but I wasn't obviously too sure. But it seems that yes, the snow has occurred, and they issued those advisories calling from anywhere from 1 to 3, even localized amounts of up to 4 inches. And I would say that is definitely possible. And if this is a bit more, I guess, long lasting than previously thought, then some of these amounts could easily go into the 6-inch range. So that is that. Obviously, notice across Maine we do have flood warnings, flood watches. There could be a decent amount of rain from that cold front part of the system. You can see up to 2, maybe even more inches of rainfall, and they localize the areas up to 3. And again, those the most eye-popping thing is just these freeze watches and frost advisories and whatnot that is occurring all across the deep South United States. So that is definitely impressive. So let's go back now and start showing you some of the weather model data that I'm kind of wanting to show you. Let's see what the newest model one. Yep, hour 16. So let's set it back at 7 p.m. when I'm recording this video. Notice this is the current system right now. The radar is a bit more lit up, so you know, the model may be underestimating some activity, but overall a pretty good job. Notice it's at 999 millibars of low pressure. As I put this forward, you will see that it begins to continues to strengthen at 998, 996 eventually, but it doesn't even have to be as strong as it necessarily has to, as it would have to normally be in order to produce the winds it's producing, because of a high pressure that you can see. You can't really see it, but it's really trying to, you know, move towards the south and east. It's bumping into this low pressure and it's creating this alley, this vortex, or this vortex of very, very strong, powerful winds. And that is, you know, driving all that lake effect, the rain and snow, because of relatively cold air for October across very warm waters. Still, you know, 50s and maybe even some 60s in some, or sorry, 40s and 50s in some areas. So obviously that is producing some lake effect. Do note also another impressive feature is the cold front here that will begin impacting New England and coastal Northeast. Cape Cod, you can see right there, getting probably the most as it's further stuck out into the ocean. And then Maine getting more of that activity, especially into tomorrow morning. And this system is pretty stationary. Look, I mean, this low pressure is just spinning in place, essentially, not really doing much, and that will continue piling snow onto the UP and northern Michigan and potentially some of these snow belts across Indiana. And that cold front also stalls out across portions of extreme eastern Maine and southeastern Canada. So that is also something to keep in mind. This only goes through our really tomorrow noon. But throughout that time, you can expect the total additional snowfall accumulations to look something like this. Again, you know, under those lake belts, it's very hard to predict what will exactly happen. I don't think we'll have, you know, I know for a fact right there, they're showing up to 8 inches. I don't think we'll have additional amounts of up to 8. You know, I wouldn't exclude it, the possibility. That would really have to be an overperforming event, but it's definitely a possibility if the rates are heavy enough. You know, it wouldn't be widespread, but still a possibility. And do note across the UP, those amounts seem realistic, you know, potentially up towards another foot of snow across some of those areas. And yeah, definitely a powerful lake effect event. And across Michigan, you know, the northern kind of cap of Michigan, a decent 1 to 3, maybe even 5 inches of snow as well. A little bit of snow off Lake Erie is also expected. In terms of total accumulated precipitation, so this now includes snowfall and rain. You can see the rain amounts obviously still aren't fully shown, but through tomorrow noon already some decent amounts. Under any thunderstorm and whatnot, you could expect some more significant amounts. And this one really just goes to show you how the lake belts are, you know, fully in throttle as the heaviest precipitation occurs kind of offwind of these things. So let's now go to a model, the GFS, and let's focus on the 2-meter temperature anomaly. So this is a, again, I explained this in my previous videos. It shows you where the temperature is at compared to a historical average. So if it's cooler, it's shown by the blue. If it's warmer, then it's shown by the oranges. And yes, you can see the west, the southwest is seeing something completely different from what Eastern and Midwest is seeing. You know, if you live in my area, you'd think that everybody's dealing with cold weather. Winter has come across the West. Where is this winter? Fall is super long. So again, across such a big country, weather differs quite a bit. So this is the current standing picture. You can see a lot of this cold air has already spilled into pretty far south into the United States, but it will continue to be pumped further and further south than it normally would have because of the stationary and kind of slow-moving storm. That's, again, allowing a lot of this cold air to be pumped in. Notice the West, pretty extreme anomalies in their own regard. That's all obviously impressive, but more impressive is, you know, some of these anomalies on this cooler side, especially since they're bringing frost and freezes. Most areas seeing their first of the year, pretty much no one is spared. Northern Mexico, Texas, as far west, as Texas and New Mexico, and as far east as eventually the Northeast and Florida. So this will obviously subside eventually, but notice through Tuesday night and into Wednesday, another very chilly night for the deep south. That's where a lot of the coastal areas will be seeing their frosts and freezes. Notice that into Wednesday and Thursday, also a chilly night, not as cold. Definitely, though, still some frost and freezes across the south, maybe as consecutive day. But then notice towards the north, the warm air starts moving in, and we start seeing a warmer pattern, generally speaking, and a cooler kind of gets out of there relatively quickly. In terms of actual thermometer readings, let's take a look at this. 2-meter temperature shaded. This is what the thermometer reading would show. So it's not just anomaly. Again, you can still visualize pretty clearly where that cold air is. So this is what we are at currently right now. And again, as this cold air moves in, especially towards the Great Lakes, we can start seeing some of that lake effect rain transition into areas of heavier snow. So that's obviously a concern. So for those areas, people impacted by that, your morning commute may be a bit more slippery than it normally would have been without that snow, obviously. Notice, the frost and freezes get pretty far south tonight, but it's not the furthest southern extent. That will be tomorrow night, Tuesday into Wednesday, and you can see that 7 a.m. I mean, we have, I think a lot of these are probably underdone. 36. The National Weather Service is calling for 32 all the way down to the coast. So as impressive as this looks, it may be even colder. And then notice that Wednesday into Thursday, another chilly night, right? You can see many areas redoing the same thing, maybe just a little bit less, just a few degrees warmer potentially. And the Northeast eventually gets in on this. That's especially Thursday into Friday, some very cool weather. But eventually you can see the warm air quickly moves in. I mean, it's actually incredible how rapidly the warm air moves in. And that's to do because of another weather setup that's going to lead to potentially a very big storm, the kind of biggest one of the season yet. So stay tuned for that. I will be talking about that as well. So yeah, I showed you the temperature anomaly. I showed you, the cold air. I want to go back to the National Weather Service map because notice where these freeze watches are, freeze warnings. Sorry, that's imminent. That's tonight, right? So anywhere here, you're expecting to see a frost and freeze tonight. So if you're still watching this across Kansas and you have plants outside and you didn't know until now, well, you should probably bring those indoors if you want them to be saved. If you live further deep south across those lighter colors, you can see that's the second day. That's just a watch, so it's not a warning yet. It probably will be a warning tomorrow, but that's into tomorrow night, so it's a Tuesday and into Wednesday. And again, some of these areas are going to be even colder than my area way up in Illinois because we're kind of sheltered by the lake. So I click on random location in southern Mississippi. There's that freeze watch, 32 degrees, and you can see the night after 33. And a lot of plants could still get injured, especially any tropical or cold sensitive plants by 33 degrees. It doesn't necessarily have to be 32. Obviously across the areas where the snow's occurring, there's going to be cold temperatures if you have snow cover. Areas in Minnesota are probably going to be very chilly as well. Well, I know for a fact they're going to be very chilly. Let's click on random location just south of Second Cloud. You can see 22. That's a season ender. But do notice the days are going to be nice in terms of besides the cold, it's going to be nice weather. And later on in the week it's going to get warm, 65, 70, and typically that's probably closer to something what you would see in a normal fall. Based on this past few years, we've seen very warm falls, so these temperatures really make me feel like I'm recording this video in November, not mid-October. So it's kind of been messing with me for a little bit. Just looking at the radar, tracking the snow, it just feels like it's winter. But in a sense, we're getting close, but we're not there yet. So even in this time that I've been recording, you can see some of these bands have been transitioning more towards snow. It's a bit hard to see under these colorations, but so that's probably the biggest risk. They issued advisories up here as well, 1 to 3 inches. That's especially into tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if they issue some across Ohio. As you can see, clearly some snow is developing just east of Cleveland. And of course, there could be some severe storms, especially across the Northeast with this powerful cold front from this system. So yeah, a very unique system. Lots of cold, but lots of snow in the localized areas. Quite a bit of rain. And after this is done and over with, this system, right, we are looking at something, an incredible pattern. So I want to show you the European here, and again, I'm going to show you the system. It just goes to show you the scope of this thing. It's massive. It's a large storm. However, it will be moving out eventually, pretty quickly. At first, very slowly. Eventually, it speeds up. And by Thursday, Friday, most areas are just stuck with a little bit of cool weather behind from it. And a lot of the Midwest, Central United States, that Minnesota, that you're seeing in the 22 degrees at night, you'll be in the 70s soon. And that is caused because of another high pressure that sets up here, and a series of low pressures tracking across the north that will contribute to a flow, this time from the south. Some pretty strong winds, and you can see that as we get through the weekend, these things intensify. These bars get closer and closer together. We see a massive low pressure move in with a lot of moisture for the northwest and northern California, Nevada. Again, still a little bit of fuzzy details about this, but the European has been especially consistent with this, along with the GFS though. Just the European a bit more. And you can see this thing develops into a massive storm. Obviously, you could tell very strong winds. It's going to be very warm, potentially even just downright hot across the same areas that are seeing frost and freezes in the next few days. And do note that, this could evolve into our first kind of big system where snow occurs across areas that are more typically used to it, at this time of the year, as opposed to the Great Lakes or even the southern Great Lakes, right? So yeah, this could be definitely a massive storm. Look at that, very impressive. Cold front, warm front, snowy side, especially Canada getting impacted by this. But look, the pattern continues. We have another system moving in right after that one. So that system moves away. We see more activity, potentially more cold air, more snow. That would be very interesting. And obviously, I have to click on a total snowfall because it's always fun to look at this, even if it's very far out. Notice these snowfall amounts would be heavy, and also for the mountains. So that would be kind of good news if they could get a nice early snow cover going. But yeah, for now, that's basically it, guys. Just wanted to give you an update on the system. It's going to continue bringing, strong winds, heavy rain in throughout the night. I'm sure if you live across this general area, you're feeling the impacts, direct impacts from it. If you live across the south, you will be feeling the impacts from this soon. And if you live across the west, well, you could also argue you're feeling impacts from this by the very warm air that is occurring. So, but, especially across the northwest with that big pattern change, there will be cooler air moving in, so the heat wave will eventually break down. Alright, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. And let's quickly go and check on this webcam, refresh this, see if it's still snowing across some of these areas. 8:40, yep, still snowing. Alright, see, with that type of accumulation rate, you could easily pick up 6 inches if this were to occur for a few hours, and we'll have to wait and see if it does. Alright, guys, thank you so much for watching. See ya. Bye.